Hello, my name is Brendan Farrell. I'm the architect of the DevOps suite at BMC Software. Today I'm going to be walking through building the application model inside of BRPM. So first, what exactly are we going to want to set up? Today, what I'm going to try to model is an application that has two environments. Its first environment has two servers. The first server has an application server on it. The second server has the database. On the second environment, that environment will have one server, which will have the app and DB both on the same host. And finally, what are we going to do inside of RPM? So we're going to build the servers 1, 2, and 3. We're going to walk through the building of the environments 1 and environments 2. We're going to create two components of the application, the app server and the DB, and finally the application itself to move this and to bring this all together. And finally we'll add properties on the different levels so that we can utilize them later as we build out requests. So here's my RPM. I'm currently in the environment metadata, but I'm going to move to build out my servers first. So I'm going to go to environment server. And I'm going to build out our 3 servers. So first I'm going to create a server. In this case, I'm just going to call it server 1. Server 1. The DNS will be server1.bmc.com. We'll leave the IP address. This will be a Linux machine, and I won't add it to any environments at this time. Next, I'm going to create that second server, server 2. Server2.bmc.com. This can be a Windows machine. Finally, the third server. Server 3. Server3.bmc.com. Again, I'll use Linux. We'll create that. Now we're going to create environments to wrap up those servers. So I'll go to this Environments tab, and I'll add a new environment. We'll call this environment 1. I'm going to leave environment types empty for this at this point, but I could choose whether I wanted this to be a development, test, or production server here. I'm going to leave the deployment policies open, meaning that anything can be deployed to it, or any request can be deployed to it at any time, except for if we have a closed window for the deployment, meaning something like a database, being down, or the application server needing maintenance. So this is environment 1, and I'm going to choose server 1 and server 2, like we showed in our picture, to be part of that. Now I'm going to create environment 2. Environment 2. Again, I'll leave this both as none and open, but I'll choose server 3 to be in this one. Now I'm going to move over to the components. So this is, again, the building blocks of my application. What is a part of my app? So in this case, I have an application server and I have a DB. It could be a web tier. It could be, a much lower part if I had like a specific sub piece of an application that I wanted to deploy to. But in this case, I'll just create these two. So, and again, this is a named pair here. So I'm going to say app server. We'll add properties to this later, but for the time being right now it's just name, and then DB. So now we've created all those smaller pieces. So what we can do now is actually, I'm going to add some of the properties to them. So if I go to back to my environment tab, and I choose the properties tab, I've added a couple of properties already, like number of connections, password, user, and I'm going to create another property too called Java heap. So this is going to be important as we deploy our application to determine what sort of properties we need for the app to run. So Java heap, I'm going to default it to 1024 megs, and I'm going to add that to my app server component. I could mark it as private. In this case, I won't. Now I'm going to assign some of the other properties. So number of connections, I'm going to add this to my Oracle component. So here, or sorry, my DB component. Here we have the DB component. I have a default value of 1,000. Password and user, I'm going to assign these to my servers. So I'll go down here to the server assignment, and password will be for all three. And I'll do the same with my user. And this is just going to give information to to the request in order to run commands against those servers. Speed that up. Choose servers 1, 2, and 3, and I'll update that. Okay. So now we're going to wrap it all up within an application. So I'm going to go to my application tab here. I'm going to create a new app. I'm going to call it application 1, and I'll say this is version 1. I can also choose to to have strict plan control, and this means that we have to follow our plan construct during deployments, but we'll save that for another day. So for right now, I'll leave that off. So we've created our application. So now we're going to add and remove environments. So I'm going to add environments 1 and 2. I'm going to add my components. So I have app server and DB. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to copy these components to the environment. So in this case, I could actually drag and drop each one, or I can just click copy all components to all environments, which is what I'm going to do now. And now if you remember from our picture, in our slide, we had one host with an app server on one server and the DB on the other, and in the second environment, for server 3, we had the app server and the DB on both. So I'm going to now map that inside of the application. So the way I do that is to click on the components themselves and choose where that location is. In this case, again, I'm going to say this is component version now, 1, and that's on server 1. Okay. And here, I'm going to choose in version 1, server 2 for the DB. And for environment 2, I'm going to say that both components, are on server 3. At this point, I can actually set property values for the different components per environment if I needed to. So let's say environment 1 is more my production server, and environment 2 is my dev server. So here I need to have double the memory. And let's also now change the property for the DB. So I'll say again in my production account here that I'm going to need 2,000 connections available for the database. And you can actually see that I can choose that these are locked so that they're not allowed to be changed at deployment time, or whether I want to remove them from the application. And I can actually add properties as well. If we look back into the component, you can actually see that that property value has changed here as well. So if I go into this one, it'll be the original value, and the environment one is where we change it. So at this point, we have a built-up application. It has the environments modeled. Environment one, again, having 2 servers with one component each on them, and environment 2 having a single server with both components there. And that'll conclude this segment. On the next segment, we can talk about user management and how that ties into the application. And then following that, we'll talk about actually building up requests and deploying the application. Thank you.